If you're using pen and paper to track your mileage for your gig work, it's possible that you may be leaving money on the table as it pertains to your taxable deductions. Today I'm going to be sharing with you a few apps that appear to be very popular in the gig economy space, how to get the maximum tax deductions for your gig work so that you are aware of the necessary documents that the IRS requires for you to keep for your mileage deductions, how to track your profit margins, as well as a review and walkthrough of the Stride app, one of the gig work mileage trackers. So if any of this interests you, keep watching. Hey friends, welcome back to the channel. My name is Shanita if you're new here. I am a public educator based here in Houston, Texas, and on this channel, we explore the strategies and tools to help you amp up your side hustle game, become more productive, as well as pay off those student loans faster. So if any of these topics interest you, consider subscribing. Before I start, please keep in mind that I am not a tax attorney or an accountant. So please be aware that the advice I'm sharing with you today is based on my own personal experience and understanding of how to prepare for tax season as a part-time gig worker. So I advise you to make sure you consult with your tax preparer, tax attorney, tax accountant, or a financial advisor that you trust to make sure that what you are doing is the best for your small business or side hustle gig. And that advice is always well worth whatever fees involved with doing so, because while free advice provided on YouTube can give you clarity, a double check from someone who specializes in this field will probably save you more money in the long run. So you do want to take the time to get this correct the first time around. So the top 5 mileage trackers that I hear most gig workers use is Everlance, MileIQ, the Stride Mileage and Tax Tracker, the QuickBooks Self-Employed app, and Hurdler. And these are in no particular order. I'll leave a link below in the description box to the Rideshare Guy's webpage where he's already done a full in-depth review of 8 different mileage apps that are great for gig workers. And so for that reason, in this video, I'll only be covering one of those apps, which is the Stride app, and I've been using it over the last 3 years. So for gig workers who use their personal vehicle for business, there are 2 different ways that they can deduct their car expenses on their tax return. The first is the total of your car expenses for the current tax year. So that includes depreciation, lease payments, car repairs, garage rent, gas and oil, tolls and parking fees, tires, repairs and tune-ups, car insurance, registration fees, as well as the interest accrued from car payments. The second option that gig workers use to deduct their car expenses on their tax return is through the standard mileage rate. Now, to calculate this, you would need to know what the standard mileage rate is for the given year you are doing your tax return. I'll leave a link below in the description box where you can find that information. Now, once you've read through that link that I provided, determine what type of situation you are in to be able to use the standard mileage rate tax deduction. There are 2 common scenarios here. The first scenario is you are driving your own personal vehicle and the company that you are contracted with uses the IRS standard mileage rate in order to determine how much you should be reimbursed. So take me for example. I'm using my personal vehicle to perform courier services on behalf of the DoorDash platform. In this case, my business is the sole proprietor that is independently contracted with DoorDash. If your situation fits this scenario, then you would most likely use the standard mileage rate. When I look at my mileage report Stride has provided me, I see January 2nd, I drove a total of 23.1 miles. And according to the IRS website, the standard mileage rate for 2020 was 57.5. So I would take 23.01 times 57.5, and that would equal 1323. Take the decimal and move it over 2 decimal spaces to the left, and you will have $13.23. So my tax deduction for January 2nd would be $13.23, which is exactly what the Stride app has already calculated. The Stride app automatically calculates the current year's standard mileage rate as is determined by the IRS. However, for demonstration purposes, I thought it would be helpful to show this equation in written form. The standard mileage rate is based off of the average vehicle cost for the given year. So if you have a car that is less expensive than the average to maintain it, it's most likely they're making a profit. The second scenario is for those who drive a company car for business, but then they themselves are responsible for operating it. This includes any maintenance, gas, or parking fees. In this case, the standard mileage rate would not apply to this scenario. In this scenario, the person behind the wheel is only operating it. So now that you have an idea of the two different ways gig workers can deduct their car expenses on their tax return, you can make an informed decision on what option works best for you in getting the greatest return during the tax season. So now the biggest part of this is getting all your paperwork together. If you've made more than $600 over the past year doing your gig work, you should have received a 1099 NCE rather than what you received last year, which was a 1099 miscellaneous. The 1099 NCE is now what's used to track independent contractor income. To read up on more information on the difference between the two, I will provide 2 different links for you in the description box. So you can access the Stride app in 2 different ways. You can access it through your phone, or you can log in to a physical computer. For this demonstration, I'm actually going to show you it on a physical computer. I'm going to click on the option to get my 2020 tax summary report so that I could prepare for my 2020 taxes. So I click on Get My Tax Report. It then will email me a copy of my report. And then you should see an email from Stride Health with a subject heading that says Your Tax Report from Stride. In the body of the email, it gives you information on what documents are included, which is the income log, the mileage log, and your expense log, as well as the cover sheet of your tax summary in a PDF form. On the tax summary page, which I consider to be the cover page of your full report, it should give you the total income of how much you've made within your side hustle or gig work. This only happens if you've been manually including your weekly earnings into the app. That's something that you do have to do manually, and I'll show you that in a moment. It then breaks out all of your expenses in categories: your deductible mileage for the year, any supplies that you purchased for your gig work, and any other additional expenses. This document is a Stride tax earnings. This document is only going to be available to you if you have been manually each week putting in your earnings for the week from your gig economy app into the Stride app. The 2 apps don't talk to each other, so you do have to manually take whatever your earnings are and put it directly into the Stride app. At the end of the year, the Stride app will keep a tally of all of your earnings, and then it will populate this report for you. This is really important to note because if you're using the DoorDash app only keeps track of the last 4 to 5 months of your income, and then after that, you may have to call DoorDash customer service in order to retrieve all the information from your past earnings. So it's really good to keep practice of keeping your own records. The next document is a full report of any additional expenses. That includes if you needed to buy any PPE for yourself last year, if you purchased a gig work branded shirt. For example, DoorDash does have their own merch that you can purchase. It's very helpful to wear that if you feel like it's easy to be recognized when you walk into restaurants. There's the mileage report, which comes from every time you get into your vehicle, you are using the Stride app to document where you're going and document where you started and where you ended up. It also gives a full detail of the date, the distance, the type of job that you were doing at the time, and the total tax deduction based on the calculation that we talked about earlier. In addition to this, the Stride app also keeps track of all of your receipts. So in the previous screen, I showed you the expense report. The expense report also parallels to whatever receipts you stored in the Stride app by taking a picture of the receipt and uploading it to the Stride app. You can then log into the Stride app on your desktop and then download all the photos into one document so that you have that readily available for your tax preparer if they need it. Within the Stride app, it tells you all the different mileage deductions that you can take based on what type of gig work that you do, which is really helpful because depending on which type of gig work you select, it'll only show you the types of deductions that you can take based on what you selected. Now, your tax summary is really helpful because it also is synonymous with your profit and loss summary, which is what you will complete when you file your taxes. It is called a Schedule C form. So when you look at your 1099 NCE, which shows you your full earnings from your gig work for the entire year, which would be on line 1, and then you look at line 31, which is whatever the difference is minus your expenses that you now can see on your Stride tax summary, you can then see on line 31 what your actual profit was for that year. So as you can see, all the documents that the Stride app populates for you and sends to you in an email does fit the IRS record-keeping requirement of mileage for each business use, the total mileage for the year, and the time, place, and purpose of the mileage you are keeping track of. Now this is really important information, I think, because it'll teach you not to accept every single order that you receive when you do your gig work. Gig workers who did not qualify for the Paycheck Protection Program often were denied because their line 31 did not show a net profit. The amount of money that they spent doing the gig work exceeded the amount of money that they actually made in the long run. So it's really important to understand your mileage in terms of how many miles you're driving to the restaurant and then to the customer, and how much money you're actually earning from that gig work. So in this example, DoorDash is telling you that the total mileage for this delivery to the sushi restaurant is 5 miles. The total mileage to get to the restaurant was 1.08 miles with a tax deduction of 61 cents. Now let's calculate the mileage to get from the restaurant to the customer. The distance to get from the restaurant to the customer was 7.85 miles. So the total tax deduction to get from the restaurant to the customer would be $4.39. The total payout after completing this delivery was $12 even. So I made a profit. Now, when you use a Stride app or any mileage tracker app for that matter, you don't have to start and stop the mileage app every single time you go to a restaurant and then you go to a customer. I chose to do this for the illustration of this video and how to see if you're actually making a profit off of your deliveries. If you're finding that the total tax deduction is exceeding the amount of money that you are getting paid out for that delivery, then you may need to evaluate your strategy and how you're accepting your orders. I love the Stride app. I think it's a very user-friendly app, and the best part is that it saves you time and money. I'm not affiliated with Stride. This is not a paid promotion for Stride. I just happen to really enjoy it, and I thought that this would be a really great video to make to help anyone else who is interested in figuring out ways to track their mileage and ensure that they're getting the best tax deduction possible. As I mentioned before, there's several other mileage apps that you can use, but this one is my personal preference. If you are new here and would like to check out what I've been up to thus far, check out these 2 recommended videos. And if you enjoyed this video, please feel free to give it a thumbs up, as well as hitting that notification bell so that you can be informed every time I upload a new video. Until then, I'll see you in the next one.